we are. We're back. We're back.
And it's nice to be back. Have you missed us?
Yeah, it's been a while too. So we've been away for a number of reasons. I had to do a bit of television stuff. We had a flu on one of the occasions. And also, Matt, who helps us behind the scenes, and his wife Claire have had a baby. So that was wonderful too. So they needed to get a bit of rest as well. But we're back as promised. And I suppose I better tell you the type of thing we're going to talk about tonight. Because if you're new, we're going to be taking all your questions. So we have some questions. And when you put a question in the comments, if you're live, put the word question or a capital Q so that we can spot it when it comes up in all the threads and all the hundreds of different comments people are making, so it stands out. And have a thought about any questions you'd like to ask us about anything paranormal. We won't be talking about the what was the name of the person? Buller, wasn't it? The that type of thing, because I think that's a bit.
Well, we're not going to talk about the lady missing or vanished into thin air, because it wouldn't be fair to the family.
Yeah,
because at the moment, Craig, it's just pure speculation. It's not fair to the family.
Yeah, that's what I said beforehand. And also, I'll probably keep away from predictions at the moment. More sort of because I do those on Coffee with Craig and on James' channel as well, which is in the description below. And we'll talk just about all sorts of things anyway. But I thought we'd just start talking off. We thought, well, something to get us kicked off, what we're going to talk about. Not tonight, but tomorrow, Saturday, in the UK, depends what part of the world you're in, but it's what they call Shivaratri, which is the Indian Hindu celebration of the night of Shiva, the dark night of Shiva. And we were going to have a chat about that.
Yeah, we were going to go to that ourselves, but it meant we'd have to be up for 24 hours to do that. And we've already promised a grandchild that we're going to take him on a steam train Sunday, so we wouldn't be fit for purpose if we'd done that. But our thoughts and our prayers are with the Hindu people, and many blessings to them.
So, those of you who don't know, I'll just tell you a few things about it, because was it last year or the year before, Jane? I went to India to the ashram to do the all-night vigil, didn't I?
That would have been 3 years.
3 years ago now.
Yeah.
Well, I went over to Sharavana's ashram, and I went right into the south of India to do the Shivaratri celebrations, and they really get a feel of the energy. Yeah, because this is a very, very special time. Now, this celebration is not even Hindu, really, because it goes back. They think that the worship of Shiva goes back prehistory. They don't know when its original roots come. It could have gone back centuries. There's been all sorts of talk about could Shiva be some visitor from outer space that brought special knowledge to the human race. There's all sorts of stuff. But it's become part of the pantheon of the gods in Hinduism, and one of the most important celebration in the Hindu calendar, really, even more than Diwali, where they have all the fireworks and lights, which most of them to the West know about. And it's considered, this is the dark night, and often people will stay up all night through the night of Shiva. And it's the time, there's two elements, there's Shiva and Shakti, and the two come together at this time of year. Shiva is supposed to have married his consort Parvati at this time. Okay, so the idea is the Parvati would represent the energy of nature, and Shiva is like a symbol of consciousness, and it's like consciousness and energy come together. And this is the point. This on Saturday night is when the two energies come together very powerfully as one on the marriage night of Shiva, as it were. And this energy at this particular time, particularly because most of us watching this channel are very interested in paranormal things, psychic things, spiritual things. This is considered as the most powerful point and sacred point, where your energies will be tremendously high. So your spiritual forces within you are very, very high, because Shiva was a symbol also, and was a symbol of, let's say, of the meditative state. He's, apart from one instance of one other sort of instance of Vishnu, Shiva is usually the only god that's ever shown in the seated cross-legged position of meditation. So he is a symbol of meditation, of the meditative side, of that aspect of ourselves where we go into ourselves to find the higher consciousness. He's the one that also clears the pathway. He's the destructive force, so the creative force can come in. So we have to clear the old so the new can come. So it's a very powerful force that is dynamic. He's also a symbol of the darkness, is also symbolic of the great void that supports all of existence. So this is a very energetic, powerful time when people chant the mantras, particularly Om Namah Shivaya, which will be chanted repeatedly, right up to the lead up. And I was in India, right up to the lead up, all sorts of fascinating pujas and rituals would be done, going into rivers and sitting in the jungles and worshipping the snakes and all sorts of interesting things. But all the time, throughout the ashrams of India, they'd be chanting Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And this can be very powerful in your own spiritual work. It triggers, it's what's called bija mantras. They're key core mantras that trigger all the powers of the spirit body to help your energy, your spirit to awaken at this very powerful time that transcends all religions. So wherever you come from, whatever your religion beliefs, you can still tap into primal energy at this time that has been looked upon for centuries. This is the time when Shiva takes the form of what you call Nataraj, the dancing Shiva, like we got at home, that beautiful wheel of fire that he dances.
So we tap into some of these souls' energies out there.
Yeah. So any questions about, if you want to ask something about Shivarati and share what limited knowledge I have, or any other questions, you're welcome to start to sort of give us your questions now. We'll start having a talk about all things spiritual. But this, like I say, is a particularly spiritually powerful time that we're leading up to now. It happens once a year, although there's a Shivarati every month. There's the Maha Shivaratri, as they call it, the Great Shivarati is tomorrow. So hopefully we have some good questions. Now don't forget, guys, put a Q or a question word, the word question in front if you can. And it helps us to identify and spot questions that comes in.
Craig?
So do you want to say something about that then, Jane?
Patrons.
Okay. So Jane wants me to remind you about becoming a patron, because if you have a look at the description below to this video, there's a little link in there to our patron site. And if you become a Patreon or patron, you can help support the work we're doing and keep our work going and keep the this studio open and help us with our attempt to make a spiritual center. Ultimately, that's what we're trying ultimately to do. And we've done quite a lot of spiritual charitable work with it as well. But it's not money for me and Jane, it's money for this charitable not-for-profit organization that we've set up in order to help to support some of the spiritual work
and to do good things around the world.
Yeah,
that's important.
So I don't know if we've got any questions yet. Don't forget to put your questions in, guys.
Them off, I think.
Well, you can say your hellos. We can do our hellos first, can't we? We haven't done our hellos even to people. I don't know. Matt's got some problems there. Oh, we go. Oh, question. Does everyone have the ability to see spirit? Or is it purely gifted, something that we've been...
Well, I think, to me, personally, it's a gift. To me, personally.
I think being a medium, it's a gift. I don't think everybody has the power to be a medium, because I think it's something...
Yep.
Yep. Back. Sorry about that. We were having some sound problems there. We've just been trying to readjust Jane's mic. We were going to do a switch show.
I thought you said rearrange Jane's mind.
Or rearrange Jane's mind. That would be an impossibility. Okay. Hopefully you can hear us, guys. Jane's mic's in a bit of these are directional mics, so if it points the wrong way, Jane, just if you get trouble, just pick it up and hold it.
Yeah.
If you get stuck. So I don't think everybody can be mediums. I think that's something you're born with and have to develop, and you don't know if you're a medium until until you've worked for you many years.
Go on the evidence.
Yeah, well, you learn in circle and you develop your abilities.
Intellectually, you should have the evidence,
and then you can find out if you can give evidence or not. But does everybody have the power to see spirit? Well, I think that's probably likely, because there's lots of people who make no claims to being mediums or psychics, and yet they see the spirit. My dad saw my mum.
Especially towards the end of their life, they might be able to see spirit that come for them or others.
Yeah, well, I think at a time of a death, isn't there?
Yeah.
People see spirits, and sometimes you see the spirits of the living. This is something that's phantoms of the living is another fascinating thing. Sometimes you'll see projection of somebody who's been in an accident somewhere, and their spirit appears in the room even though they're still alive. Or someone that's in a hospital might be able to appear to someone like in their astral form. So I don't think it's, these are perceptions that we all have. Don't you think, Jane?
Mm-hmm. Shall we have the next question?
Don't you have anything you can add to all this?
No, but I can see you. You're a living spirit. Beyond insight, spiritual readings. Have Reiki today, and Reiki must said she's seen a herd of elephants charging. What does that mean?
All right.
She needs to drink more coffee.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they say in spiritualism, this isn't necessary in Reiki, because Reiki is a different form of healing.
Yeah, that's healing.
To
Symbolisms.
But they say within spiritualism that you must never mix healing and clairvoyance together. Healers are very often tempted to want to give a little bit of clairvoyance when they're doing their healing. And they say it's not good to do that, because A, it disrupts the healing power, and also the focus at that time should be purely on the healing thoughts. So obviously, your name is Beyond. Let me call you by your Christian name, Beyond. Obviously, at that time, that Reiki healer shouldn't really be doing any form of clairvoyance. And obviously it must have upset you, must have made you wonder, what on earth is a stampeding herd of elephants about? I don't think it means, I can't see any symbolic significance there. Maybe it was just something on her mind, or maybe it's something, the power of the energy felt like a stampeding herd of elephants. But really, you don't want to give clairvoyance when you're doing healing. That's a no-no, I'm afraid. So maybe you might gently, just don't say I've said it, but just gently say to her, shouldn't really mix healing and clairvoyance. Because if you've done spiritual readings, you should hopefully know that yourself as well, if you've been trained in spiritualism.
Next question. Jazz. What plans do you have for the future? Do you plan still on doing live streams? Do you have any plans for the future? Patrons, do you, Craig?
Yeah, lots. At the moment, well, one of the things I've been doing specially has been getting the patrons in, and we've been doing these, go and have a look at the videos. We've got another one coming out next week, but we've been doing these circles with the patrons, sort of development circles. So I'm encouraging the patrons to come in and take part. So we put your video up, and we interact, and I get evidence from you, and you get some evidence from me, just as we teach in a circle. We teach people to develop. Not on Zoom, it's on the StreamYard that we use for this software. But then at the same time, just like we can ask questions now, the people coming in on YouTube, we're inviting the live audience in at the same time to participate. So it's going to be like, it's not going to be just readings, it's going to be about teaching the fundamentals, the mechanics of mediumship, so that people can get to know a little bit more about this. And this, I think, is particularly going to be good because the patrons can come on board, come on the live video stream with me. General public won't be able to come in on the live stream, just the patrons. And I think it will be useful because, frankly, I don't know how you feel about this, Jane, but the standard of teaching out there for mediums is very poor at the moment, because there's not many people left who are really giving full-on teaching. It all seems to be sort of one-day workshops where you go with a certificate of competence afterwards, which is meaningless because, you know, you have to spend many years to develop mediumship. So I hope that over the coming years, and particularly with the patrons, I hope to do at least one session a month, maybe more, just based upon spiritual development. And I'm also doing a lot of work like that now individually with some people that I work with one-to-one through my website and through the Zooms to teach people, mentoring, I'm calling it, for those that are really serious about developing their mediumship. Any other thoughts that you'd like to do?
Not at the moment.
Jane?
Is there another question? Who is this? Yusla? Would you consider doing a prediction for South Africa at some point, Craig or Jane? I realise you said we would not be doing these tonight. Just wondering if you would consider. We'll consider it, but we're not doing that tonight. I've got my predictions that I've done, which I will put out next week because I've been quite busy doing personal one-to-one readings, and sometimes I need to have a break from it. So I'll be giving mine out next week.
And actually, also. So many people are asking, I mean, Canadians have been pestering in the comments for ages, can I do something about Canada, because so much is going on there. Lots going on in Australia too, food shortages and things already being seen in Australia, which we were talking about, food shortages. I've had some people today write to us, I think you had some too, from Vietnam, because something was written in the Vietnamese papers recently. And so all over the world, each country, it would be lovely to do them all, but the problem is, there's just not time to do it all. And of course, Jane and I are also trying to earn livings as well. So doing the videos, the prediction ones particularly take a long time to get tuned into and honed down and present in a way that I feel I want to say it correctly. You know, so there's quite a lot of work goes into those. So anyway, we will try, Ursula, and really with these things, you can't. Although I try to, but you can't really say, I'm now going to do a load of predictions about this, because it kind of comes to you in flashes and bits. And I think you guys you're very good, nice of you to think how good we are, but we can't see it all. You know, we get bits, and hopefully the bits we get are right and can be helpful. But I don't claim to know it all. But if something comes from South Africa, the fact you brought it up, it might even mean the spirit guides help us to get some insights into that.
Right, next.
So keep your questions coming, guys. Any topics?
Tiger Lily. Hi, Craig and Jane. If I was able to have a private session with Craig about future predictions and guidance, how does this work? Please explain. You have to look on the website, won't they?
Well, no, she wants to know. Tiger Lily wants to know about what happens in a private session with this, or because if you have one with me on Zoom, I can obviously work internationally. Jane does her readings from home here near Winchester, here in Eastleigh. So and it kind of happens when you get predictions. You kind of, if you're going to give a prediction to someone, the first thing you have to do is you first have to establish that you're actually linked with them. It's no good someone just sitting in front of you can sit in front of anybody and they can predict this, that and the other, but there's no knowing if that's going to be real or not unless you can first of all give some proof. So if a person's coming for a purely clairvoyant or psychic type reading, the first thing you might do is tell them a bit about themselves, tell them about what's been happening in their life, tell them some things that only they know about their past and future and past. And then once you've kind of established that you're linked in and that you can genuinely, you've got something, then something might come through about the future and where you feel things are going. But even the future, you know, is not set in stone, because the future can be changed by our free will. So I don't see it as telling the future. I see it as seeing the current trajectory based upon what I've picked up from the things I've already told the person about their current situation, without them having to tell me about it. I tell them what's going on in their life. And Jane does exactly the same thing. And the same thing happens, of course, if we're communicating with the spirit world, which we mainly use that for trying to give proof and evidence of the spirit world. It's not really about predicting the future, but sometimes the spirit world must sometimes throw in a message about the future. Though if we do what we call mediumistic readings, they're more about proof to give comfort that life continues after death. So we kind of keep them two separate. One we call clairvoyant readings, one we call mediumistic readings, because they kind of require, don't they, Jane, a certain different way of tuning in when you use different sort of methods. Is it the same for you?
Yes, it's the same for me. It depends on the energy of the person. I mean, it depends. I mean, I have hundreds of emails that come in, and it's not I'm cherry picking, but I couldn't do no more than 2 readings a day because we're given 100%, because it takes a lot of energy. But I like to feel that person in front of me and doing my very best. So when I get an email and if I see a blue light go across that email, then I know that's a communication that I'm meant to see that person. And as I say, for us, we've been doing service for all our lives now, really, with all this work, haven't we?
Yeah. And like you say, Jane, Jane and I, because particularly being mediums as we are, we can't do like these phone readers do, where they're picking the phone up, doing a reading, next 5-minute reading, next one, next 5-minute reading, next 5. You can't
tarot
do that.
Cards, aren't they?
And they're just using purely relying on tarot cards and things. Well, they're helpful, but they're just a tool, the tarot cards. We have to really get linked in and tuned in. That's why we can only do a couple a day, really. Do 3 a day and you're tired, and you might do one day and the next day you're burnt out because you've been doing them the day before. Because if you do it properly, it is very exhausting. It's very, very tiring. And although you replenish yourself with, you use special techniques to replenish your prana and your energy, you can, if you're going to do it properly, you can only do so many. And that's why, as soon as we put readings up, availability, they go within minutes, because unfortunately, I would love to do more because I like helping people. But you can only do so much if you're going to do it properly.
Next question.
That's my opinion.
Alexander, do you believe that being a vegetarian or vegan helps raising your vibration? I think yes, it does, because I think that's what I like about the Indian people, because they're brought up as vegans and vegetarians. And I feel that what you eat is very important with your health, because your body's like your temple. Not everybody can go vegetarian or a vegan. It depends on a personal choice. I mean, it's like today, Craig took me out for a meal. Where was that place called?
Wagamama's.
Yeah, Wagamama's. And I had noodles, and I saw blood on there, so I couldn't eat it. So I had to leave it because I just physically couldn't eat it. And I feel it does depend upon your spirituality. Everybody's different. I mean, we've got a friend that had a cardiac arrest, say, 10 years ago, and she changed her diet to vegan. And she's really here to tell the tale, which is marvellous.
Yeah, I think, Jane and I aren't vegetarians.
Well, I do go vegan.
We go periods where we go just where we try to. And I think limited meat eating certainly is better than too much. But I don't think it actually raises your vibration. I think what meat does on any other
it depends on
food
animals
that is
suffered.
what they call tamasic. There's these 3 aspects of food: tamasic, ragistic, and sattvic. So freshly picked food is sattvic, so it's got lots of life force and lots of energy in it. Meat has got dark energy in it because it's like dead energy, so it can be, it can be tamasic. And when you get tamasic food, it holds you kind of back in a way, because it pollutes the brain, and it creates in meditation what they call vrittis, which are like the hecticness of the thoughts, the vibration and energy. You can't get into the stillness. So if you tend to eat meat, it tends to take you longer to clear that, to get to the peace, as it were. I think if a person is vegetarian, it's easier for them to get to the peace quicker. But then the Dalai Lama is a meat eater because of the environment he comes from. In Tibet, you couldn't survive on carrots. You haven't got them. You're having to live some meat. Same with the Eskimos. They have to eat the fish and things. That's the wrong name for them nowadays, isn't it? But you know what I mean. Different cultures have to have different things, and I think different body types require different things. I actually need to have to eat meat because of something with my blood. But it's important, I think, that each person has to temper their diet to what's best for them. India, fabulous. The Indian food there, it's not like you get in the Indian restaurants here, that's Bangladeshi or Pakistani food. The Indian vegetarian diet is fabulous when you have them on the plantain leaf and they have all the little bits around. It's delicious. And I'm sure in that environment one could live in that very easily. But if you took that plantain leaf of food and you tried to eat it here in the cold weather of a winter in the UK or America or wherever, I think it'd be much more difficult. So I think it depends on the culture, it depends on the type of food you're eating, and it depends on, how much you're burning in your body, basically. It's fuel, ultimately. But anyway, I don't think it lifts your vibration, but it certainly stops those vrittis, as they call it, the energies of the brain.
Right, the next question.
Confusing to the piece.
Agility bits, Pat. A couple of weeks ago, I felt a very strong presence of someone who had recently passed. She was standing behind her husband. I didn't know what to do. Should I have told him? I think that would have probably been quite nice to tell him that you sense his wife there, because different people, I think men find it harder with bereavement than women, though it's quite hard for women if they lose their soulmate or partner. But I feel that men really do find it very difficult to cope with. That's in my view for the many men that have come to have consultation with me. About you, Craig?
I think, Pat, I knowing you as a person, because I know you're a patron, I've talked to you on the Zoom quite a lot, so I know you. And I know you're a very kind person and you wouldn't say anything to anybody that would ever upset anybody. And I know that you've got a lot of kindness. So I think it would have probably been quite all right if you'd have gently said, I've been very interested in mediumship, and would I be right in saying that you've lost somebody? I think that might be all right. But then I've seen other people, sometimes people that claim to be mediums who aren't really, who will jump on everybody and start telling them things, and not everybody's open to it. That person might have very strong Christian faith or a very strong faith of any type that doesn't really allow for that in their mind, or they might be a deep scientific thinker that thinks it's all nonsense. It's not. It's difficult. So you have to have a certain amount of subtlety, something
Gentle.
I don't have much of, when you approach these sort of with these people with this. But I think in your case, Pat, I think it's coming from a good place, and I think you're not going to go pushing it on people.
No, she's
are
got
you?
a good heart.
You're gonna, and I think it may be, So, and you ought to start developing letting your abilities shine a bit, Pat, because if we hold back all the time with it, then it's not going to flow as much as it could do. So,
all right, next question.
hopefully you can.
Nana, question. I was told once that I would receive a medical degree. It never happened, and now it's far too late and expensive now. How come that sometimes predictions... I think it depends on the person who's saying it, actually, don't you? With predictions. Everybody, when we do predictions, I actually see these things happen in front of people. It's like a psychic TV screen. But time is nothing in the spirit realm. It's everything here on the earth plane. So it depends on the person that's doing those predictions. Yeah,
and actually, if I'm saying something that might involve a prediction for someone, I don't say this will happen, that will happen. I will say if you do this, this may happen. Because actually, as I said before, it's the current trajectory. And it's like with the nadis as well, because the nadis make all sorts of amazing predictions based upon the current situation. But of course, we still have free will, and even the things that are in those nadis, which are so astonishing, and the things they've already said, they're not necessarily going to come true. We can't just sit back, put our feet up, and say, "Okay, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to win the lottery tomorrow." It's not going to work like that. We have to put effort in. We have to give energy to our destiny to make it happen. Otherwise, it would just all unfold, And if something terrible was going to happen, there's nothing we could do about it. If there's something good's going to happen, when we don't act upon it, it's not going to happen. So I think it always requires our energy, Nana, to make things happen. And also, of course, they were told that you would receive a medical degree.
Well, perhaps has she done anything?
We don't know
what do
who
you
the
call it?
medium said that.
No, pathology. Has she been involved in the laboratory? This lady.
I don't know.
Well, it feels like she's got
Pathology.
hospital training anyway, because I feel that's why she's so interested in everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what predictions are predictions, and like I say,
pathologist.
the things Jane and I say, and all these things we say about world events, I don't claim to see it all. I often say
It
the
wouldn't
words
do for
through
you
a
to
mirror
be
darkly.
psychic 24/7. Your brain wouldn't be able to cope with it.
Yeah, we don't see it all, and none of us see it all, and I don't think we can see it all, because we have free will, and even the most seemingly unchangeable things like earthquakes and things like that can perhaps be changed as the world and mankind become more positively spiritual. Maybe the world itself becomes a better place. Even things that we feel are out of our control, like earthquakes or meteorites and all those type of things, we just change the cosmic order somehow. We change something about the quantum field that makes everything different. Because I think we are generating a world around us. This whole world, like going back to the Shivaratri thing, it's all like the dance. It's all like the dance of an illusion. It's a dance of Maya. And we dance with it. But as we do, we change and move it. And we turn the world ourselves. So what will happen is very much dependent upon us and the purity of our heart. Collectively.
Oh, good. Question. The Tibetans used special bells and sounds for healing in the past. How good was this methodology? Do you think we will see this used in common Western medicine in the near future? Who knows? We've actually seen the Tibetan monks dance and use the bells. And when we actually saw the Dalai Lama in that, it does bring different vibrations, and also their mandalas, doesn't it, Craig?
Well, I think there's a tremendously perhaps underestimated power to sound, and also to light as well, actually, because light can be used for healing as well. But sound in particularly I would go to the point of saying mantras are very, very powerful things. The myths say that we could lift huge weights just by the power of mantras, that doors could be locked, they'll never be opened by the power of mantras. Okay, it all sound a little bit like Aladdin's cave and open sesame sort of things when I say that, but the power of mantras, they're in the old mythology, and I think there's tremendous power to mantras. And there's also many of the mantras that we get in Sanskrit are also linked to the idea of the sounds of the spirit body itself. So the bija mantras, for example, have a vibration. Each of the chakras, which are the spiritual energy centers that run up the spine, has mantras associated and to increase their power. And the same thing, mantras can be used for inner healing. And even they found that the brain patterns of our mind will also resonate well to certain sounds. So certain types of electronic music by people, geniuses like Brian Eno, who I love, will often use certain frequencies that actually resonate by the resonation of the brain patterns. Now, all of this, including the Tibetan bells, which are obviously being thought about for the special sounds, the Indian music too of the sitar, the notes on the sitar are based upon the rhythms of the internal rhythms of the spirit of the human body and of the astral body, as it were. So all those sounds you're hearing on the sitar, they're more than just sounds and harmonies. They are actually trying to deliberately resonate. So what you're asking there, McKay, about the ideas of these special bells and sounds for healing, it is an incredibly powerful methodology, and there's so many more that you could also include in this, I would say. Yeah,
very good
Jane,
answer.
yeah,
Very
any
good
other
answer.
thoughts? Yeah.
No. I mean, when you think the Church of England, they use bells, don't they? And all over the world, different religions use bells, don't they?
Yeah, and the healing power, like Om is powerful, but then Amen is also a very powerful. All these things have resonance, all the cultures of the world. And even if you look into the, into the societies from Africa and the
right, this is
Amazon
quite
and things,
nice.
similar thoughts.
Right. Eileen, thousands of souls have passed suddenly in earthquakes. How, if all can we help to make sense of this? Do pray. Well, you know, there is miracles. I thought about this the other day when a little baby was born under that rubble, and then they're still pulling children out. So that's a miracle. And I think if we all pull together in prayers, we can help worldwide. If we all put our consciousness together, there needn't be wars, there needn't be suffering, but there's definitely miracles in that. And I believe in prayers very much so, but I also believe that we should all be kind and compassionate and help each other. So is Mother Earth making all these things happen? Is it an awakening? Or is it because these buildings haven't been built properly? There's a reason for everything that happens in the universe and also in the material world, isn't there, Craig?
And this makes me also think about some of the transcripts of the trance mediumship that went on within spiritualism during the First and Second World War. I remember listening. Some of them you can listen to where they made recordings, but also read some of the old spiritualist books in which the spirit guides were talking about how at times, like the Battle of the Somme and things, so many people were coming to the spirit world at once, you know, and they were talking about the great floods of people and how they were still able to help them despite the many souls that were transitioning all at once. And I'm sure, particularly during wars and things like that, it must be a very busy time in the spirit world, because when we first pass over, particularly if we've died in a situation that's involved unexpected death, we didn't expect to die. You see, most of those people dying in Turkey would have been asleep when their buildings collapsed, because it happened in the middle, and Syria too, mustn't forget Syria as well. But they all collapsed while they were sleeping. So they would have just awoken in the spirit world, not knowing what on earth had happened. And it would have been, perhaps for them, I think, when a transition's happened like that, confusing for them. So I expect the spirit world was busy. But I also think prayers, whatever religion you believe in and whatever form of prayer you want, you know, it doesn't have to be necessary. All prayer works because it's all linked to this idea of sending positive thought. Thoughts of things, thoughts and energy, attention and thoughts go out, and they can help, you know. And even negative thoughts sent to people in the spirit world can be negative to them. They're positive and negative to these things, but the energy of light that goes with our love and energy of
but
thought,
negative thoughts, Craig, are evil thoughts, aren't they?
As well. I don't believe in good and evil, but you know,
I
they have their different functions.
You don't believe in good and evil, I do.
Well, that's a whole debate about what is evil. Don't ask me that one, because we'll be here all
there
night.
is. It's a beautiful world, but it's the people in it at the moment. Answer to Jane. Yes, that's right. I've done psychology in Southampton unit and I've worked in medicine. Well done. I felt that very strong with you, Nana. That's good. Right, Craig.
Is it possible to visit the spirit world in dreams?
Well, it has been known for people to visit the spirit world in dreams. It has been known that people, loved ones that have gone over, they've done visitations in the consciousness in dreams, very much. But we couldn't just come out of our body like we're sat here and go and visit the spirit world. It doesn't happen like that, does it? We don't astral travel over to the spirit realm because on demand or click our fingers.
Yeah, well, we don't travel out of our bodies when we do a mediumistic communication.
No, we don't.
It happens in the here and now.
That's right.
But I think one of the interesting things about that is some of the studies that have been done of people's dreams when they're dying. So people who have been terminally ill, they've done a lot of studies. Carl Jung did studies in this, but then others did further studies in it. And it seems that people who are... The dreams of the people that are dying are very fascinating, because even if a person is kind of skeptical, there's an indication in the dream always that life will continue. There's always a hopefulness in these dreams, even though they know they're going to die and there's terrible fears about it or whatever still in their conscious life. In their dreaming life, there's almost a reassurance to say it's all going to be all right, we're going to continue. And those people often, even if they're not open to the idea of life after death, have dreams of people from the past who they knew who are now in the spirit world. So I'm sure, certainly at those critical times, the spirit world are able to communicate with us, and I'm sure many other times the spirit world can. But also we do have to remember that sometimes, I remember a number of people used to get really upset. They'd have a dream of their husband who died, and he wanted to get a divorce, and he's angry with them and things like that. They're often sometimes symbolic dreams, like a dream that your husband's divorced you, and even though you loved him through his life and now he's in the spirit world, it's a dream sometimes on an emotional level that might be saying something like, it feels just like he's divorced you, it feels like he's thrown you out, it feels like he hates you because he's gone from your life, you know. So there's the emotional dreams as well, so we have to learn to distinguish between those and what are the true connections from the spirit world.
Ian, great to see you both. What do you think about remote viewing? Would remote viewers be able to reach the spirit world? I bet we've got some remote viewers viewing Russia at the moment, don't you?
Yeah, I'd quite like to get involved in that, actually. Some of the people I've been doing some private work with work for the CIA, I believe. Remote viewing, separate thing, I think, to what we're talking about here. When Jane and I do mediumship, that is connections to the spirit world, and sometimes when we do mediumistic connections to the spirit world tell us what it's like. They give us clues, and it's fascinating because it's like, oh, I didn't realise that. You know, I remember one reading for someone that was a Freemason, and I said, well, what about all these secrets? How do you keep secrets in the spirit world? And they said, oh, we still carry on doing the Freemasons in the spirit world. I thought, God, that's weird. That's a strange sort of thing. So we can get bits and pieces about what goes on, and I think the spirit world's divided into many different levels depending upon a person's level of consciousness. So, you know, some people will do the regular things they've done here in life, like I said, the Freemasons. Others might understand it as a world of light and so forth. The spirit world is not a place, it's a state. Remote viewing, I think, is more on the psychic type of level of being able to astrally, clairvoyance it is really, of being able to see a place. And I think it's a fantastic thing. I've worked with it a lot with my groups in the past when I've run circles. We'll have to do it on some of the ones that we do with the patrons that you were asking about earlier on. Some remote viewing would be a very interesting one to try. I'll definitely put that on my list of things to start teaching. Yeah.
What's that? Nita? If a young child has psychic powers, can that come off as anxiety to others around them instead of a gift? Well, in my experience, that children that have psychic powers, it doesn't usually happen until they're going through puberty at the age of 13. And then again, they've got to concentrate on their education because they're what I might call sensitives. They sense vibrations. If you've got a child that's got anxiety, obviously they're a very sensitive child and they need to grow and to develop and use those gifts wisely, because children do see things because their perceptions can be quite heightened like animals, but they have to use it at the right time, don't they, Craig?
Yeah, I think we mustn't over-interpret things with children.
Like these indigo children.
Yeah, I think people get a bit carried away, and often sometimes children with difficulties have often been said, oh, they're psychic, when actually they've probably got more psychological problems. But I think that anybody that's psychic, whether they're a child or an adult, tend to naturally be more sensitive. If I'm put in a room full of anxious people, I'll come out anxious. So their energy rubs off on me. I don't know if my energy, because I'm psychic, would rub off on another person more. People come when they sit with me and Jane sometimes, oh, I feel like a healing energy around you. But that's only because we've opened to the spirit and the spirit's brought the energy around us in the room when we're working. But we all of us exchange energy.
But your psychic powers do rub off when you're hungry, Craig.
Yes. I will move heaven and earth to make sure I'm fed.
Sweet.
And my third eye in the stomach. Yeah. Well, that's another thing for the Shivaratri too, going back to that. It's a good time for working with the third eye centre particularly, because that's Shiva's eye. Anyway, that's me going off in another direction. My husband lost his mother 2 years ago. She was mentally ill, suffering dementia. She was troubled. After her passing, we had insects, rats and flies in our home.
I've not heard that.
Well, I think you're probably, to be honest,
Not heard that before.
chill girl,
Somebody.
I think you're reading things into that. I know people quite often come through when we're doing mediumistic work.
But all the faculties have come back to them.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to say that we do readings for people, and one of the things you do when you're doing mediumistic work, one of the first things you ask the spirit person is, how did you die? Because that's quite important, because the person will remember that. So it's good evidence and proof when you're building up a profile of someone that you know in the spirit. And you'll ask them that, and sometimes they say, well, I had dementia at the end, I couldn't remember a thing, and you might pick that up, but then you're actually communicating with them as if they're just sharp as a button, is that the right word?
Yes.
Bright as a button, sharp as a knife. I'm getting it now, dementia. But they're obviously the faculties come back, because it's the brain that gets dementia. So you're now saying, oh, we had insects and rats and flies and I think you're looking at those things thinking, oh, these are not nice things, are they? Insects, rats, flies and things. So you're obviously thinking that's something worrying and troublesome and something you should be concerned about. I think I'd say put that aside.
Absolutely.
Know that his mum is over there perfectly safe, and all her facilities. Dementia does not affect the spirit body or the spirit mind.
That's right. Kay Wood. When I was younger, I was going delirious with fever, and I remember seeing my grandma, who passed, sat at the end of my bed. Was it real? I felt like she was reassuring. I was 8 years old. I'm sure it was very real. I mean, years ago, they would say, oh, you're having religious hallucinations if you've got fever. But children don't lie. Children do see these things. She's probably come to comfort you, and probably was there to give you reassurance. And probably, like most grandmothers or that, they have the love for their grandchildren, and they're just protecting you. Probably was protecting you.
And I think sometimes the psychic experiences or paranormal experiences of children are some of the most interesting ones. We mentioned here before on the channel about reincarnation memories the little boy had and things like that. But when a child sees something, then they don't tend to make those type of things up. And a lot of the most interesting near-death experiences of families stuck in multiple car crashes and things like that, the recounts of the children are the most interesting of them all, because they start describing, children that had near-death experiences start describing grandparents and things that had passed before that they never met, and giving details about things that they couldn't possibly know about. So I think the study is certainly worthy of a lot of study. The study of children's near-death experiences, particularly, and children's visions and of phantoms and things. And I think, actually, just to answer your question, Kay, where I agree entirely with Jane, I think that was most likely a direct experience of the spirit. I'm sure.
It's a lovely experience.
Lovely.
Was that Tanja or? I lost my grandparents last year. I wonder if they can see what we are doing and talking on a daily basis. Are our ancestors protecting? I believe our ancestors do protect us. I know the Chinese and Indian people believe that very much, and I believe that. It's through our ancestors or our forefathers, the very reason why we're all existing today in the 21st century. I'm sure that your grandparents can see you, because from the spirit side, it's like looking here on earth through a glass, if you like, plated wall, and though you might sense and you're thinking of them, because every thought goes out to the etheric, will actually attract them. And if you had a very close connection with your grandparents, yes, they would see what you're doing. Perhaps you can't see them, can't hear them, but you might be able to sense them. And I can assure you, your grandparents are around you more than you realise.
I think also I would add to that also, when the spirit world connect with us, they're not like stood watching what we're doing all day long. So they're not with you when you're in the loo, for example.
Well, I hope not.
They certainly wouldn't come near when
or
I'm
in the
loo.
bath.
The devil himself would be driven away by that. But they connect with us on an inner level. They connect with us through our inner view, through our minds, through our spirit, And so when you send a thought to them, that's a connection bridge in a way, and they can connect with you. And that's why I think it's good to think about those that we've lost, not in a negative way, but to think in a positive way of all the good things if we can. Even if we've had rotten times with somebody, try to think the positive things of them. It helps them, and I think it helps clear the karma too. And I actually think we're all connected in so many ways too, actually. Both spiritually, we're connected with families. We're spiritually connected with group souls on the astral level. And I think even here on Earth, I think we're even genetically, we're obviously physically connected genetically, but I think there's almost a lineage also in the energy of the sins of the fathers, they called it in the Bible, that there's actually connections with our family trees energy as well. So there's many different ways that we are able to, we are connected with those in the spirit and in the past, as well as perhaps even those in the future too.
Claire, when my dad passed away, it was traumatic, and when I got home from the hospital, I went to bed and I felt what I can only describe as a black angel with wings blowing over the top of me. What was that? Well, it might be sometimes like people have fears of death, don't they? People have fears of what they perceive with death and that. I've never seen a black angel. I have seen an angel of light, a very tall angel with the most beautiful, beautiful colours. See, I would describe that as an incubon, would you?
Incubus?
Yeah.
I'm not, no, I don't think I probably would. There's a lot of ways we could look at that, what you've got there, Claire, actually. On the one hand, maybe it is a symbolic of the angel of death has come into your life, you know, and maybe the angel of death, if there is such a thing, has an energy like that as we would see it from the earthly
There's
side.
nothing bad around it.
But then there's also a lot of people have this thing, particularly at night, where they wake up and can't move.
Yeah.
Where they get it's like a form of narcolepsy in which the body can't move, right? I've forgotten the name of it now. You've broken my thought.
No, I haven't.
I've forgotten the name of it anyway. But and so you can't actually move. And what often happens when people get that feeling, that they sort of lay there and you can't move, you can't scream, you can't say anything, and you're sort of like this. And there's often a pressure on the chest, and the dream people will get a feeling that there's someone sat on the chest. And this has been a nickname for it. It's called old hag syndrome, because it's like an old hag sat on your chest. So it could be because you are going through an enormously tired, stressful period, that area at the back of the brain that stops us thrashing around at night, that wakes up a bit slow and causes this effect, that through sheer tiredness and exhaustion you were kind of in a frozen state, I would imagine. I'd expect you couldn't move when you had that feeling, and had triggered one of these sort of type of feelings of something sat on you. In the medieval times, they used to interpret it as being an incubus or a succubus, which were sort of like evil spirits that would attack one. But I think it's much more linked, actually, to something much more psychological and much more linked to the brain being overexhausted and the body not being able to move properly and the unconscious mind manifesting its fears. Because, you know, there's so much we can say that as the spirit, but there's also the very power that comes from ourselves as well that manifests in our world around us too, that people experience in so many ways. And there's so many levels we can talk about all that type of thing as well, actually.
Do you read that?
Okay, Clifford's saying, hi there, you were on about dreaming. Well, my partner died last year and she was in hospital. I was fast asleep and I felt like something banged on my chest. I opened my eyes and saw her face looking at me.
Oh, we're trying to connect with him then.
So again, I think it's, you know, I think when these things happen, particularly at the time of a death, particularly at the time of a crisis of some sort, where it might not result in a death, like car crashes, operations, things that are kind of high stress, traumatic times, I think we connect, you know, and I'm sure, you know, Clifford, if you were asked, you'd probably say, I believe that was real, because you would know from your own experience that this isn't just you dreaming, that there's something much more to it, that there's something much more alive and alert to this, that proves to you, I think, that this is a real thing. You know, ultimately these these things are very subjective experiences, aren't they? You've had that experience, and you might get people that are skeptical that say, "Oh no, it's all psychological, it's all this," but because you've had that experience, and many others have had these crisis visions, they call them sometimes, where you see somebody in a crisis time, or also just after they died, like you've had there. There's an energy at that time that makes spirit communication perhaps more likely. Well, we're getting closer to the end of the show now, guys, and I'd just like to say thank you for coming back with us. But remember again that Jane and I do all this. We love doing it, but we need your support. I sound like somebody in one of these charities, we need your support for the kitten jugglers, to stop it in South America, like Steve Martin said. No, we need your help as patrons, and it would be extremely helpful if you can become a patron. There's benefits to being a patron. You interact with me, and I put little bits up there, but more importantly, if you can just give a little bit and just support it, just be a patron for the sake of it, so that we can keep this going, so that we can keep the studio here, because it's expensive business running something like this. So if put some money in, it doesn't have to be a lot. Have a look at the link below.
But you would prefer if it was a lot.
A lot would be very helpful. Mega amounts would be tremendously helpful, because then we
Donald
can take
Trump,
it to the next stage.
Donald Trump, are you listening out there?
So we need someone with the mega money to think, right, Craig and Jane, we're going to turn you into let you have that centre that you'd like. And so there we go. So anyway, do we say one more question before we go?
I think we should say goodbyes.
We're going to say goodbye now. All right, so we're going to say goodbye now, guys. Thank you ever so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.